Chapter 1. Sierra, don't stay in Metropolis. Come back to your aunt. Let me take care of you for these last few months. The vast room was dark, the only light coming from the river of traffic flowing beneath the high rise. The silhouette of a girl sitting numbly was faintly visible against the floor-to-ceiling window. The moment the phone screen went dark, Sierra Westwood seemed to jolt awake, picking it up again. I'll take care of things at the company this month, then I'll come back. The man didn't return to the room until late at night. The sound of running water from the bathroom woke Sierra, who had just fallen asleep. She had always been a light sleeper, and now, with her illness, her rest was even more fragile. Her closed eyelids trembled slightly. Ethan Hawthorne used to rush home from work to coax her to sleep. If he was genuinely delayed, he would quietly wash up before getting into bed. But now, he didn't seem to care if his late-night routine would disturb her rest. Sierra turned over, her back to the bathroom, trying to will herself back to sleep. A corner of the down comforter was lifted. The man's weight caused the mattress to dip slightly as Ethan lay down and picked up his phone again. "You didn't have dinner? I saw the plate was still on your desk." There was no preamble, his tone casual, as if it were just an offhand question. When they first got together, Sierra was painfully thin and her health was poor. If she missed even a single bite, Ethan would become incredibly anxious, playing the fool just to make her happy enough to finish her meal. It was like that every single day. When did it all change? Sierra wondered faintly, clutching the corner of the comforter. It was probably when he changed his phone wallpaper from her photo. Or maybe it was the lipstick stain on his shirt collar 6 months ago. A sharp pain shot through her. Sierra bit down hard, refusing to cry out in front of him. She no longer had the energy to dwell on those things. After a long silence, she finally answered, "I didn't feel like eating, so I didn't." He tactfully didn't press further, or perhaps he didn't want to. He just gave a non-committal hum. He didn't spare her a single glance, his attention completely absorbed by his phone, the corners of his eyes crinkling with a smile. Ethan was cheating on her. With his secretary. She had seen the secretary before a recent college graduate. Sierra had known about it for a while, but she had never confronted him. Perhaps the torment of her illness had made her weak, stripping her of the courage to face the truth. But more than that, it was because she couldn't leave Ethan. Sierra slowly turned her head. She thought she would cry, but no tears came. So many wasted years should have a proper ending. This was the last month. Once she settled her affairs in Metropolis, Sierra would never stay here again. From now on, until the day she died, she and this man would have nothing more to do with each other. Chapter 2. Sierra woke before dawn. Ethan hadn't been home in months, and his sudden return made her uneasy. She had slept poorly. The woman in the mirror was pale, gaunt, her eyes dull. She scooped a handful of cold water and splashed it on her face. The sudden chill sent her into a fit of coughing. Sierra's whole body trembled as she coughed. Her frame bent so low she was almost inside the sink. She only managed to catch her breath after streaks of red swirled with the water and disappeared down the drain. Sierra had to go to the company today and forced herself to put on some light makeup. Just as she finished, the phone on her desk rang again. Sierra answered it. "Hello, is this Miss Westwood?" The woman's voice on the other end was sickeningly sweet. "I'm Mr. Hawthorne's secretary. I saw you have an appointment with Mr. Peterson. He has a meeting scheduled for today, so I thought I'd help you reschedule." So, it was Ethan's other woman. Does Mr. Hawthorne's secretary now handle Mr. Peterson's schedule as well? Tell Mr. Peterson to call me himself. Sierra knew. She hadn't been to the company in so long that this girl probably considered herself the lady of the house. Naturally, she didn't want Sierra showing up and reminding everyone of her homewrecker status. 6 months ago, Sierra might have been furious. She might have screamed at Ethan, demanding to know why he was letting his mistress walk all over her. But now, Sierra just wanted to take what was hers. As for Ethan, if the girl wanted him, she could have him. After finishing her business at the company, Sierra was about to leave when she ran into Ethan. He asked her to wait in his office so they could go home together. The handover of her duties took the better part of the day, and Sierra's body was genuinely struggling to keep up, so she agreed. Ethan's office was still just as she had decorated it. A long string of ivy trailed down beside his desk, and a photo of the two of them sat on the bookshelf. Sierra stared at the photo for a long while before reaching out and taking down the frame. The picture was taken just after they had taken over the company. The man and woman in the photo were beaming, full of endless hope for the future. Sierra caressed the photograph, the sunlight from that day seeming to spill across time and onto her fingertips. But now, all of that had changed. Sierra crumpled the photo into a ball and tossed it into the trash can without a second thought. Ethan returned just in time to witness the scene. The frame was still in her hand, but the picture was gone. Realizing what she had done, Ethan strode over, his voice filled with shock. "What are you doing?" Sierra glanced at him, her tone flat. "Nothing. My hand was itching to throw something. Pretty good aim, don't you think?" "That's our picture. It's been there for years. Why would you throw it away for fun?" Sierra let out a laugh. "It's just a photo, and it's only in the trash can. If you really want it, you can fish it out." Ethan heard the mockery in her words. "Forget it. We have plenty more at home. It doesn't matter." When they were first dating, Sierra had made him a small embroidered charm with a clumsy stick figure drawing of the two of them on it. Ethan had treasured it, wearing it every day. Once he came to pick her up during a downpour, and the charm accidentally fell on the road. Ethan was heartbroken. Sierra comforted him, promising to embroider another one. He agreed, but after dropping Sierra back at her dorm, he went back out into the storm and searched for hours, catching a bad cold in the process. Sierra had called him a fool for looking for such a worthless little thing, but he told her he didn't want to lose a single thing she had ever given him. The sincere, sun-bright boy from back then was now looking at their photo in the trash can without a flicker of emotion. Was garbage dirtier than a rainstorm? No. The truth was he just didn't love her anymore. A morbid curiosity sparked within her. How would Ethan react when she died? Chapter 3. The ride home was silent. Ethan didn't know where this suffocating feeling was coming from. He figured his tie was just too tight, and as soon as they got home, he loosened it and headed for the walk-in closet. As he pulled open a drawer, a glance out of the corner of his eye revealed that the compartments belonging to Sierra were all empty. When the company was just starting, they used to go to work together. Sierra loved to pick out ties for him and would buy matching bow ties for herself. They had stood side by side in this closet many times, helping each other with their matching accessories, a secret sweetness they shared in front of everyone. Even after Sierra stopped coming to the office as much, she would still organize these things. But now, all the bow ties were gone, leaving only cold, empty compartments. Ethan ran a hand through his hair in frustration. The relief he expected from loosening his tie never came. He felt even more uncomfortable. Sierra was on the sofa drinking water. She looked up, puzzled, as Ethan stormed out of the closet. "Where are your bow ties?" Ethan spoke first, stopping Sierra as she was about to get up and go to her room. "They were just collecting dust. I put them away." How could she just put them away? She used to say those bow ties, and his ties were a matching set. Just seeing them reminded her of him and made her feel warm inside. Ethan was about to ask more when his phone rang, interrupting him. "Mr. Hawthorne, the power's out at the office, and I'm all alone and scared. Can you come get me?" Hearing Selena Thorne's voice, Ethan instinctively tried to cover the receiver, but the deliberately delicate female voice still drifted into Sierra's ear. Ethan didn't know how to explain, looking at Sierra awkwardly. For the past 6 months, Selena had used this feigned weakness countless times to summon Ethan. At first, Sierra didn't know about the affair. She thought a recent graduate might be struggling to adjust and wanted to help where she could. Instead, the two of them had started an affair right under her nose. But at this point, Sierra no longer cared to argue. Go ahead. It wouldn't be good for a young woman to be in danger so late at night. Thinking of Selena waiting for him in the dark, Ethan grabbed his car keys and hurried out. Sierra watched him leave with a cold expression, then turned and went into the closet to pack her things. If Ethan had been just a little more observant, he would have noticed that it wasn't just the bow ties that were missing, but also several of her favorite coats. Even though she told herself she didn't care, Sierra couldn't help but smile bitterly. Right now, Ethan's heart was only filled with that girl. How could he possibly have room to notice her? Just as Sierra had pulled out some clothes, her phone rang. It was Ethan's grandmother. "Sierra, dear, do you really have to leave Metropolis? Whatever Ethan did wrong, Grandma will sort him out for you." Hearing her voice, Sierra's heart ached with a sorrow she couldn't name. After Sierra's parents passed away, she went through a long period of depression, refusing to eat or drink. Ethan and his grandmother had taken care of her. She couldn't bring herself to be harsh with a leaner. "Grandma, it's nothing like that. We just realized after living together for so long that we're not compatible. I'll still come back to visit you." "How could that be?" Eleanor said anxiously. "Don't I know how good Ethan is to you? That time he had to leave for Bellevue early in the morning, he remembered you'd been craving that fruit the night before. He washed it and left it by your bedside before the sun was even up. He loves you so much, how could you not be compatible?" Memories of past sweetness flooded her mind. The man she once loved now had someone else in his heart, leaving her to wander alone in the past. Sierra opened her mouth to say something but closed it again, feeling helpless. She was afraid she would burst into tears. Mumbling a few excuses, she quickly hung up the phone. The next second, another call came in. It was Mr. Peterson's voice. "Sierra, our meeting today was rushed and I forgot to give you some handover documents. There's still an employee at the office, so I had her bring them over to you." An employee still at the office. Sierra's brow twitched. Before she could even rub her temples, the doorbell rang. She opened the door and there, standing on her doorstep, was Selena Thorne, draped in Ethan's jacket. Chapter 4. Selena stood outside, not immediately offering the documents. Instead, she deliberately tugged at the jacket on her shoulders and cooed, "Sierra, your house is so far from the office." It was a long, cold trip. Sierra had seen photos of her in Ethan's album, but had never met her in person. She was beautiful, with a flirtatious air in her eyes and brows. There was a mole by her nose, in the same spot as Sierra's. Looking at her was like seeing a younger version of herself, full of love for Ethan. "Secretary Thorne, I presume. You can just give me the documents." Sierra reached for them, but Selena held on tight. When Sierra pulled, Selena stumbled forward. Seeing this, Sierra let go. Teetering on her stilettos, Selena lost her balance and fell backward, landing awkwardly on the ground. Sierra looked at the girl on the floor and couldn't help but sigh. Resigned, she crouched down to help her up, but Selena violently slapped her hand away. "You old hag, if you have a problem with me, just say so. Are you hoping I'd smash my face so E-Man would find me repulsive?" Sierra was genuinely taken aback. This was the first time she had ever seen a homewrecker so brazenly confront the wife. Any pity she felt for the girl vanished. She stood up and pressed the button by the door. A short while later, building security arrived. The property manager was confused by the scene, choosing his words carefully. "Miss Westwood, what can we do for you?" Sierra gestured toward Selena with her chin. "She's not a resident of this community. She has my documents. Please retrieve them for me and escort her off the property." The manager broke into a cold sweat. High-end communities like this prized privacy above all else. An unauthorized person getting in was a serious breach. The guards quickly hauled Selena up from the ground. She struggled, shouting, "What do you mean, unauthorized? Mr. Hawthorne himself brought me here, don't touch me." Hearing another resident's name, the guards hesitated, unsure what to do. The sound of hurried footsteps echoed from the courtyard. It was Ethan. Seeing the commotion at his door, he rushed over, took Selena from the guards, and frowned. "Sierra, what do you think you're doing? Why are you giving a new employee such a hard time?" The baseless accusation ignited Sierra's temper. "Do you have ray vision? Which eye of yours saw me giving anyone a hard time?" In all their years together, Sierra had always been gentle and unassuming. Ethan had almost forgotten she had a sharp side. But being challenged in public, especially in front of his mistress, wounded his pride. He retorted, "An employee came to deliver documents. All you had to do was accept them. Why make such an ugly scene and call security to harass her? Why are you so petty?" Sierra was speechless. She decided she was done giving him any face. "What's the relationship between you two, anyway? Cuddling in front of my house? You're so concerned about her, is she really just an employee?" Ethan valued his reputation above all else. Having this brought up in front of others made his face flush crimson. "Don't talk nonsense, there's nothing between us. When you have a dirty mind, you see dirt everywhere." Knowing he was in the wrong, he shoved the documents into Sierra's arms and walked away with his arm around Selena. Sierra pulled her shawl tighter and turned to the property manager. "I am the owner of this house. Please revoke the gentleman's access privileges." The manager nodded. Sierra saw them to the gate. Just as she was about to close it, Ethan blocked it with his hand. Chapter 5. Ethan had intended to take Selena home, but the image of Sierra standing at the door, wrapped in her shawl, flashed in his mind. Her face held a faint, mocking expression, her eyes completely devoid of emotion. He had looked into those eyes countless times and seen anxiety, concern, and worry, but never this placid emptiness. A sudden fear gripped him. Sierra's indifference made him feel like things were spiraling out of his control. So, after dropping Selena off, he turned around and rushed back home, just in time to see Sierra about to close the gate. The gate was blocked. Sierra turned to see Ethan. She looked at him calmly. "Didn't you go see your employee off?" Seeing her like this left a sour taste in Ethan's mouth. He stepped forward to take her hand. Sierra sidestepped, neatly avoiding his touch. Seeing this, Ethan could only resort to apologizing. She just graduated. She's all alone in Metropolis. To me, she's like a little sister. I can't help but look out for her a bit more. Please don't misunderstand." A sister? More like a lover. The night was deep, and a cold wind blew past Sierra, making her shiver uncontrollably. She had no desire to argue with Ethan about this anymore. She gave a perfunctory nod and hurried back into the house. Ethan followed her into the room, his eyes trailing her, worried she was still angry. Before bed, Sierra took a bottle of pills from a drawer and swallowed them with water. Ethan couldn't recall Sierra having any chronic illness that required medication. He asked with concern, "Why have you suddenly started taking medicine?" "What is it?" Sierra paused. She had been diagnosed with cancer months ago and had never hidden her medication from him. He was just too busy cultivating his relationship with Selena to have ever noticed. Sierra turned to look him in the eye, wondering what his expression would be if he knew she was dying, if he still had any feelings for her at all. "It's nothing, just vitamins." The next day was the company's celebration party. Since she hadn't officially left yet, Sierra decided to go. She wore a formal gown, mingling and making small talk among the crowd. As she lifted her head to sip her champagne, she felt a pair of eyes on her. Selena, wearing a dress remarkably similar to hers, approached with a plate of dessert. "Sierra, would you like something to eat?" A gleam of schadenfreude danced in her eyes. But Sierra hadn't eaten much that evening, and drinking on an empty stomach was making her feel unwell. So, she momentarily ignored Selena's expression and accepted the dessert. Sierra took only one bite before she felt as if a hand were choking her. Her breathing grew heavy, a crushing weight settled on her chest, and her vision began to blacken. Selena watched Sierra in her elegant gown, the endless compliments of Mrs. Hawthorne echoing in her mind. Why did she get to stand by Ethan's side, receiving everyone's praise, while she had to watch from a corner? Selena seethed with hatred. She threw a napkin at Sierra's feet. Sierra stepped on the napkin. Her high heel slipped, and she lost her balance, tumbling into the massive cake. Her back scraped violently against the metal support frame inside, a searing pain shooting through her. The loud crash startled the mingling crowd, and all eyes turned toward the source of the noise. Ethan saw the gown sticking out of the cake and realized Sierra was in trouble. He rushed over immediately. He pulled Sierra out of the cake. Blood, mixed with cream, streamed down her back. People around them were whispering. Ethan took off his suit jacket and draped it over her shoulders. Chapter 6. Pain radiated from her internal injuries and the wound on her back. Her body was shaking uncontrollably. Sierra willed her trembling body to be still and took a napkin to wipe her face clean. Much of her makeup came off, but it only made her features appear more strikingly beautiful. Clutching the suit jacket, Sierra walked step by step until she was in front of Selena. "Sierra, are you okay?" Slap before she could finish, a sharp slap from Sierra sent her head snapping to the side. The room fell silent. Sierra's voice was cold. "Is this little game of yours fun?" Selena clutched her cheek, tears welling in her eyes as she looked pitifully at Ethan. Without a second thought, Ethan stepped in front of Selena. "What is the meaning of this?" He tried to placate Sierra. "We're in public. This isn't appropriate." Sierra stared into his eyes without a word, her hands clenched into trembling fists. Blood dripped softly onto the floor. When she regained consciousness, she was staring at a white ceiling, an IV drip steadily feeding into her arm. The quiet hospital room was shattered by a series of notification chimes. The noise was unbearable. Sierra picked up her phone, and a stream of provocative messages from Selena flooded the screen. "You don't know, do you?" Ethan was the one who asked me to bring you that dessert. Did you really think he loves you that much? When your face was covered in cream just now, he didn't even want to touch you. But just the day before yesterday, we were trying out that same cream in his office. He said he loved it and had to eat every last bit. Reading the words, Sierra took a deep breath, suppressing the turmoil in her heart. Just as she turned off the screen, Ethan walked in. Seeing her sitting up, he grew anxious. Why are you up? Your IV isn't finished yet." Sierra looked at his concerned expression, Selena's words flashing through her mind. It felt so hypocritical it made her want to vomit. Her voice was sharp. "Wouldn't it be better if it wasn't finished? Don't you wish I'd just hurry up and die?" Ethan, who had been worried just a moment ago, suddenly found her behavior unreasonable. What are you so angry about? It was an accident." "You're fine now, aren't you?" Sierra cut him off. "Was the dessert with olive oil an accident? Or was the napkin deliberately thrown at my feet an accident?" Her words dripped with sarcasm. Ethan trembled with anger. "Who would know what you're allergic to? When did you become so irrational?" At his words, Sierra felt as if a bucket of ice water had been thrown over her. A wave of exhaustion washed through her. When their company first started to see success, Ethan took everyone to a steakhouse to celebrate. The steak that was served was cooked with olive oil. The first bite made Sierra's entire body itch, and a rash broke out all over her face. Ethan had stayed by her side in the hospital all night, fetching water, refusing to leave for any reason. After that, terrified she might accidentally eat it again, he had it written into the employee handbook that olive oil was banned at all company functions. And now he was asking, who would know? Sierra laughed bitterly to herself. She remained silent, turning her head away from him. Chapter 7. After Ethan left, Sierra's doctor, Felix Landon, pushed open the door to her room. "Does your husband still not know about your condition?" Sierra shook her head, an unconcealable weariness in her voice. "What difference would it make if he knew? There's no need for him to know." Back home, Sierra thought about everything Ethan had done since his affair began. Her heart, once so full of sorrow, could no longer stir. She couldn't bear to be under the same roof as him any longer. She hurriedly began packing her bags, desperate to leave. She carefully packed the sunny day charm that had always hung by her bedside. Sierra disliked damp, rainy days, so Ethan had bought her the charm. "Let it keep you company on rainy days when I'm not here," he had said so seriously. Sierra had decided to tease him. "Why only when you're not here?" "Because when I am here, I'll make you happy, whether it's raining or not." The young man's words seemed to echo in her ears, every syllable filled with sincere emotion. Sierra stroked the charm. Time had etched fine cracks across its surface. Just like her love for Ethan, it had shattered beyond repair. Sierra smiled, but there was no warmth in her eyes. The light in them seemed to extinguish in an instant. After a long moment, she whispered to the charm, "But you won't leave me, will you?" She had a fair amount of things in this house. They filled every corner, but most of them had been bought by Ethan, each item a reminder of the love they once shared. Ethan had fallen in love with someone else, and the meaning behind these things had changed. Looking at them now, Sierra no longer saw Ethan's sweet words or their moments together. Instead, she saw the man who came home in the middle of the night, the phone with a new password, the neck covered in red marks. She couldn't take these things with her. Her suitcase held only the sunny day charm and a few hastily packed clothes. Sierra took one last look around the house. As she picked up her luggage to leave, she ran straight into a furious Ethan. "Why didn't you tell me you were discharged? Aren't you a little old to be throwing tantrums?" Ethan grabbed Sierra's wrist, completely ignoring the fact that she was still a patient with a long, healing wound on her back. He questioned her viciously, and in the struggle, her luggage was thrown to the floor. Sierra wrenched her hand free and met his gaze directly. "What does my discharge have to do with you? Why should I tell you?" Only then did Ethan notice that Sierra was packed to leave. He actually laughed. "Thinking of running away right after getting out of the hospital? Where do you think you're going to go?" Sierra picked up her luggage from the floor, not wanting to engage with him. She tried to walk past him and leave. Seeing her complete indifference, Ethan's anger boiled over. He forced a cold sneer, wanting only to make her bleed. "Do you have anywhere to go? Your parents are dead." "You don't have a home?" Sierra froze. A cold wind seemed to howl right through her. The difference between being loved and not being loved was so stark. When they were in love, Ethan would accompany her to visit her parents' graves, promising to take care of her for the rest of her life. Now that he didn't love her, her parents' death had become the sharpest, most vicious sword he could wield against her. A gaping hole opened in Sierra's heart. She bit her lip, holding back tears as she continued to walk forward. The moment the words left his mouth, Ethan regretted them. He shouldn't have said that, but Sierra's defiance made it impossible for him to swallow his pride and ask her to stay. Neither of them heard the whispered name as it was lost to the wind. Chapter 8. When she arrived at the hospital parking lot, Dr. Felix Landon was already waiting. "Dr. Landon, don't you have appointments? Why are you waiting for me at the entrance?" Sierra didn't want this. She could no longer afford to repay anyone's affection. Felix led her inside. "It's fine, I switched my shift today." 10 years ago, Sierra had faced her parents' death alone in a hospital. After that, she had always hated this place. When she was sick, Ethan would have to coax her to come, never leaving her side. But now, she had to face the arrival of death on her own. Felix didn't take Sierra to an examination room, but to the hospital's back garden. "Sierra, are you really giving up on treatment? I have a senior colleague abroad who's developed a new method with very good results." Sierra met his gaze. "Dr. Landon, I'm giving up on treatment partly because I'm truly tired and don't want to put myself through it anymore. The other reason is," she thought of the necklace she had seen on Selina's neck that day, a new design from a major brand, not cheap. She spoke with a bitter taste in her mouth. "I don't have much money. Not enough for medical bills." How ironic. Sierra had built the company from the ground up with Ethan. Selina's necklace could buy a small apartment, yet she herself had no money for treatment. Ethan kept their money in a single account, containing both of their salaries. At first, Sierra had considered trying to prolong her life. But when she took out the card, she found that most of the money had been transferred out. Where did it go? Sierra thought of the necklace. Ethan had probably used it all to buy things for Selina. She was supposedly the wife of the company's founder, yet she couldn't afford to see a doctor. Who would even believe such a story? Felix fell silent, and the atmosphere became awkward. It was time to leave. Sierra stood up, and suddenly her vision went black. Her head throbbed as if it were about to explode. She fumbled to get up, tripped on the artificial turf, and pitched forward. Ethan had been in a terrible mood the night before. He had taken it out on Selina until the early hours of the morning. Today, she woke up sore all over and insisted that he accompany her to the hospital. "Ethan, hurry up, I'm not waiting for you." Ethan rubbed his temples, his finger hovering hesitantly over Sierra's contact, unsure if he should call. Had his words yesterday been too harsh? He pondered this but didn't want to be the first to back down. The image of Sierra's determined back as she left fueled a nameless anger in him. He shoved his phone into his pocket and focused on Selina. Selina clung to Ethan's arm, pouting. "It's all your fault, wearing me out like that. Now I have to come to the hospital and ruin my perfect attendance." Ethan thought back to the wildness of the previous night, and the irritation in his heart subsided slightly. "Haven't you had perfect attendance in accompanying me this month? I'll take you to buy a bag later. How's that for a perfect attendance bonus?" Selina beamed at his words. The expected pain never came. Sierra fell into a pair of arms. Felix had caught her. Selina tugged on Ethan's sleeve. "Ethan, is that woman Sierra?" Ethan followed her gaze. In the garden, two people were clinging tightly to each other. Selina felt the man beside her stiffen for a moment. Ethan clenched his fists. That silhouette was Sierra, there was no mistaking it. He shook off Selina's hand and strode over, an icy aura emanating from him. "Sierra, what are you doing?" Chapter 9. Ethan grabbed Sierra's wrist, yanking her out of Felix's arms. Already unsteady, Sierra nearly fell to the ground again. "Answer me, what are you doing with this man?" Seeing the situation escalate, Felix stepped forward to shield Sierra. Sierra held up a hand, signaling to Felix that she was fine. Her gaze fell on Selina, who was standing back and enjoying the show. Sierra pried Ethan's fingers off her one by one, her voice turning to ice. "What business is it of yours? And why are you and your secretary at the hospital at the same time? Can you give me an explanation for that?" At her words, an unnatural flicker crossed Ethan's face. "She's sick, and her family isn't in the city. I'm accompanying her out of basic human decency." The chill in Sierra's eyes deepened. "Do you personally accompany every sick employee in your company?" Her question left him speechless. The coldness on Sierra's face was something he had never seen before. As he hesitated, Selena, sensing trouble, rushed forward. "Sierra, Mr. Hawthorne is a very kind person. He just felt I couldn't handle things on my own, so he's been helping me out. Besides, don't you have someone with you too, Sierra?" Her words reignited Ethan's anger. He pulled Selena behind him. "And what about you? Since when did you have male friends to keep you company?" Sierra didn't hear a word he said. Her eyes were fixed on Selena's head. The night before, while packing, Sierra couldn't find her pearl hairpin anywhere. It was the only thing her mother had left her. She clearly remembered putting it safely in its box, but when she opened it, it was empty. When Sierra was 19, her mother was in a car accident. By the time she reached the hospital, she was unconscious and undergoing emergency surgery. The blood-stained hairpin had been left in the ambulance, and the paramedics gave it to a frantic Sierra. She had clutched the hairpin and prayed for a long time, but her mother never woke up. She hadn't cried when she found out about Ethan's affair. She hadn't cried when she was diagnosed with cancer. But when the hairpin went missing, she had cried her heart out. And now, that hairpin was in Selena's hair. "Where did you get that hairpin?" Selena froze for a moment, then blushed. "It was a reward from Mr. Hawthorne for my perfect attendance last month." Rip. Without another word, Sierra reached out and snatched the hairpin from Selena's head. Selena cried out in pain, tears instantly welling in her eyes. Startled by Sierra's action, Ethan reacted quickly, pulling Selena behind him protectively. "It's just a hairpin, was it necessary to get physical?" Hearing this, Sierra let out a desolate laugh. "Just a hairpin? Look closely. Do you see what this is?" She held the hairpin close to his face, and only then did Ethan see it clearly. "I don't care if you want to give her money or gifts, but this was my mother's hairpin." "Ethan, you disgust me." Her words struck a nerve. "Your mother is dead, what's the point of keeping her things?" At that, the color drained completely from Sierra's already pale face. "Ethan, how could you say something like that?" Sierra pulled the sunny day charm from her bag. "Do you remember this? You said this charm would protect me with you." Seeing the charm, Ethan's expression softened. He was about to apologize. Smash! Sierra threw the charm forcefully onto the ground, shattering it to pieces. "I don't need it anymore. And I don't need you either." Seeing the shattered charm, Ethan erupted in fury. "Fine, don't you dare regret this." He grabbed Selena's hand and walked away without looking back. Sierra closed her eyes, a tear silently slipping from the corner. On the way to the airport, she received a text from Ethan. I was too impulsive today. I'm coming to find you. Can we make a new sunny day charm?" Sierra glanced at it and moved his number to her block list. The next second, her phone was off, and the plane began to take off. Ethan Hawthorne, goodbye forever. Chapter 10. As Sierra flew further and further away, she paid no mind to the man incessantly texting her, nor did she care how he would react upon learning the news. As the plane climbed above the clouds, she felt a long-suppressed weight finally lift from her heart. Perhaps she should have left long ago. Back at the villa, however, the atmosphere was chillingly tense. Ethan waited from night until day. He started by sending texts. When he got no response, he called. All he heard was a mechanical voice repeating that the number he had dialed was switched off. His screen was filled with a sea of red, unanswered calls. A slow, dawning sense of wrongness finally crept over him. He walked into the closet and looked around. He rarely set foot in here, except to change. Sierra had loved to spend time here. She once said that when he wasn't home, just looking at his suits made her feel safe. Ethan went to Sierra's side of the closet, searching for clues. The clothes he had bought her were all neatly arranged. He went through them one by one, trying to find any hint of what had happened. Something's not right. He reached the end and finally noticed a discrepancy. The few pieces of clothing Sierra had bought for herself were gone. A powerful sense of panic gripped Ethan as he realized things were spiraling out of his control. A phone call shattered the heavy silence. "Mr. Hawthorne, didn't you say you were having dinner with me? Where are you?" It was Selena. The voice that usually sounded cheerful and cute now grated on his nerves. Ethan rubbed his temples, suppressing his impatience. "Not today. You go ahead and eat by yourself." But, before Selena could say more, Ethan hung up. He sat motionless for a long time, his mind urging him to go out and look for Sierra. Resigned, Ethan grabbed his jacket from the sofa and strode out the door. He drove all over the city, but there was no sign of Sierra anywhere. He tried to recall the places she frequented, only to realize he could barely think of any. During this time, he had paid so little attention to her. Dejected, Ethan returned home. A thought suddenly struck him, and he immediately had his assistant, Alex, look into Sierra's whereabouts. Alex was efficient. A short while later, the call came. "Mr. Hawthorne, Miss Westwood took a flight out of the city today." Although he had suspected it, hearing the confirmation made Ethan's mind go blank. There had been no warning, no build-up. In all their years together, they had argued, but the word leave had never been spoken. And yet, this was the person who, once she decided to leave, did so silently and absolutely. How could this be? It's impossible, he couldn't believe it. She has no family to turn to. How could she leave me? She promised she would never leave me. Ethan's voice grew cold. "Check again. If you can't get it right, you're fired." Alex had no choice but to check again and again, but the result was the same. To dispel any doubt, Alex sent the flight information to Ethan. Flight information couldn't be faked. Ethan could no longer deceive himself. Sierra had really left him. The phone slowly slipped from his hand and clattered to the floor. Ethan's mind was in turmoil. He could never have imagined that Sierra would actually leave him, leave this city. So that moment at the hospital, that was their last time seeing each other. Ethan pressed his temples, his mind replaying Sierra's expression at the hospital over and over. A sentence he didn't want to admit repeated and amplified in his head. "I don't need you anymore." Chapter 11. Only then did everything belatedly click into place for Ethan. All of Sierra's unusual behavior over the past few months flooded his mind. He was forced to admit a terrible truth. On the day she had uncharacteristically shown up at the company, she was already planning to leave him. But why? What had gone wrong? Was it because of Selena? But he hadn't done anything that serious. Just as he thought of Selena, she called. "Mr. Hawthorne, you must not have slept all night. I'm at your door with some food I made for you. If you open up, I can bring it in." Ethan clutched his phone, for the first time feeling that Selena's concern was laced with a presumptuousness he didn't like. He wasn't pleased, his voice was grim. "That's not necessary, you can go back." The house was empty and lifeless. Ethan sat silently in the living room, his thoughts a jumble. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. Ethan's first thought was that Sierra had come back. He rushed to the door. It was an employee from a second-hand marketplace. "Hello, I'm here on behalf of Miss Westwood to pick up a vanity table." He pulled out a photo to show Ethan. That vanity was the first piece of furniture they bought for this house. At the time, Sierra had looked at it, clearly loving it but refusing to admit it. Ethan had secretly bought it for her, and she had been overjoyed. She spent most of her time sitting at that vanity. But now, she was being so cruel. She was selling it, not even leaving him a single memory. "I'll buy it back from you. I'll pay you the same amount." Ethan took a deep breath, determined to keep it. The employee was surprised, clearly not used to this situation. After a moment of silence, he asked, "Are you serious?" "Yes." Ethan swiftly took out his phone and transferred the money. Only when the money was in his account did the employee believe it. Fearing Ethan would change his mind, he smiled and left quickly. Ethan sat down in front of the vanity. Its style was outdated. Ethan had told Sierra long ago that they should buy a new one. But Sierra would always stroke a corner of the tabletop and smile as she refused. Ethan followed his memory of Sierra's gesture, running his hand over the surface. In one spot, the smooth wood felt rough and uneven. Ethan leaned in for a closer look. It was a line of small words carved into the wood, clearly in Sierra's handwriting. "Sierra and Ethan, together forever." Seeing the words, the sense of loss in Ethan's heart expanded infinitely. It was like winning a one more bottle prize, only to find out the promotion had expired when you went to redeem it. She had promised they would be together forever, but she had left. Ethan sat at the vanity until late into the night. Sierra hadn't taken much with her, yet he felt the house had never been this empty. Everything that belonged to Sierra was gone. He was all alone in the vast house. Sitting there, he suddenly felt utterly adrift. Chapter 12. Selena sensed Ethan's coldness. She sent a barrage of messages, but he never replied. Feeling that something was wrong, she went to his house. In the massive villa, only one room was lit. Selena entered and followed the light. The moment she opened the door, she saw Ethan sitting in front of the vanity. He hadn't slept properly in nights. His face was covered in stubble. The light from the open door was blinding. He shielded his face with his hand. "How did you get in?" Ethan's voice was heavy with exhaustion and an undeniable irritation. He really didn't want to see Selena right now. Her presence only made his feelings for Sierra seem like a joke. Ethan stood up and blocked the doorway, shielding the room from Selena's prying eyes. His voice was impossibly cold. "I didn't ask you to come. What are you doing here?" Selena's face was a mask of disbelief. How could this be? In all the time they'd been together, she had never heard him speak to her in that tone. It was as if she were the insignificant one, the one intruding on their relationship. Selena composed herself, putting on the pitiful expression that Ethan loved most. "Mr. Hawthorne, I know I was wrong. I was just worried about you. Go home, Selena, and don't come here on your own again." The look on Ethan's face was dead serious. No amount of playing cute would work. She had been with him for so long she had almost forgotten what a decisive and unyielding man he was. She could only agree and leave obediently. The moment she was out of Ethan's sight, Selena slammed the bento box she had made for him onto the ground. Everything had been fine just a few days ago. How had it come to this? Selena thought furiously. She shouldn't have acted so rashly at the hospital. Now things were spiraling out of her control. After sending Selena away, Ethan lay on the bed, staring blankly at the ceiling. His mind was a void. Sierra was gone. In all these years, he had never seen her contact any relatives. Finding her would be like looking for a needle in a haystack. Besides, even if he could find her, would she want to see him? Her leaving without a word was a clear sign she never wanted to see him again. The thought sent a dull ache through Ethan's heart. He sat there for a long time, thinking. Even if Sierra didn't want to see him, he had to do something. Ethan pulled up the flight records Alex had sent him and decided to fly to Seabrook the next morning. Despite not having slept for several nights, he felt no fatigue. He ran a hand through his messy hair, threw a few clothes into a bag, and rushed to the airport at dawn. Ignoring the speed limit, Ethan drove like a madman, a single thought consuming him: find Sierra. After a flight of several hours, Ethan landed in Seabrook. He had asked a friend in advance to check the airport surveillance footage, hoping to find a trace of Sierra. He opened the video, and Sierra's figure appeared on the screen. Before he could even determine which way she had gone, he noticed another man by her side. Chapter 13. When Sierra first landed in Seabrook, a luggage issue kept her at the airport for a while. Just as she finally sorted it out and was about to leave, she heard someone call her name from behind. "Sierra," she spun around, surprised to see Felix Landon. Felix strode towards her, his chest heaving. He stood before her, his eyes red-rimmed. "Sierra, what do you think you're doing? Your condition has worsened, and you just up and leave. Are you trying to get yourself killed?" Sierra appreciated Felix's kindness, but she no longer had the strength to accept another person's affection. "Felix, you don't have to chase after me. You have so many other people to save. Are you just going to ignore them all?" Felix froze, staring down into her eyes. "I don't care about other people. I only care about you. I became a doctor because of you. I came to Metropolis because of you. Don't think you can shake me off that easily." Sierra was taken aback, not understanding what he meant. Felix looked at her seriously. "When we were kids, you called me Lando. Have you forgotten?" The realization dawned on Sierra. As a child, she had spent a long time at her grandmother's house. She loved to run around outside all day. One day, on a path in the fields, she found a boy sitting alone, crying. The boy was very thin and was often teased for looking like he never got enough to eat. So Sierra, in a moment of reverse psychology, nicknamed him Lando, a playful take on a larger-than-life character. They became friends and spent several summers playing together. One time, Sierra fell and cut herself badly. Lando cried in panic, vowing to become a doctor so he could heal all her wounds. And so, carrying that childhood wish, Felix Landon went to medical school, then to Metropolis, where he finally found Sierra again. The man before her looked so different from the boy, she remembered that she had never recognized him. "I have to stay with you. I promised when we were kids that I would make you better," Felix said, almost like a petulant child. Sierra was stunned. Although Felix had transformed from a semi-familiar doctor into a childhood friend, she hadn't planned for anyone else in her life. She shook her head. "Lando, we should keep some distance. You saw what happened." You know my situation is awkward right now. Sierra was being clear. She wasn't blind to Felix's feelings, but she was in no position to reciprocate. Her body was failing. Every day she lived was a bonus. How could she ruin someone else's future? Felix just shrugged it off. I'm not asking for anything, but based on our childhood friendship, I can't let you be alone. Sierra knew how stubborn he was. For the moment, she couldn't think of a way to refuse, so she had to let him come along. Ethan saw their two figures walking away side by side, and for a moment, he was too angry to speak. They had clearly run off together, and here he was, like an idiot, chasing them all this way. He remembered the sunny day charm she had smashed in front of him. No wonder she said she didn't need it anymore. Ethan let out a cold snort. So, she had found someone else. He couldn't stop himself from smashing his phone on the ground. It shattered, glass flying everywhere. People around him stared, confused. His face dark with fury, Ethan resolved to find Sierra and demand an explanation. Chapter 14. Felix and Sierra got into a taxi headed for their hotel. Sierra was quiet during the ride. The long day had left her exhausted, a deep ache seeping from her bones. She frowned slightly, resting her forehead against the cool glass of the window. Felix glanced at her worriedly several times. He reached out and touched her forehead. Just as he suspected, she had a fever. Are you cold? Felix took off his jacket and draped it over Sierra, tucking it in carefully to keep the wind out. Sierra's face was deathly pale. She didn't speak, just shook her head. A few fireworks suddenly bloomed over the mountains by the highway, perhaps for a local celebration. The fleeting bursts of light reflected in Sierra's eyes, and for the first time in a long while, a relaxed smile touched her lips. Felix felt some of his tension ease. He asked the driver to drive more smoothly. In the hotel lobby, Felix carried both their bags while Sierra followed behind him. She was looking down as she walked and bumped into his back. Confused, Sierra looked up, wondering why he had stopped. She peeked around him and saw Ethan blocking their path. Ethan's expression shifted several times as he took in their familiar demeanor. His lips moved, but it took a great effort to force the words out. Sierra, why are you with him? Why are you at a hotel? Sierra hadn't expected Ethan to find her here, but she no longer wanted anything to do with him. Just as she was about to speak, Felix cut in. I'm taking Sierra on a trip. What do you think you're doing, blocking our way? His words sent a surge of rage through Ethan. She is my wife. This conversation doesn't concern you. He suppressed his anger, his eyes locked on Sierra. A constant wind was blowing in from behind her. Sierra felt as if she might be blown over. The words she spoke were as cold as the wind itself. We won't be husband and wife for much longer. I've already had my lawyer draft the divorce papers. You'll be receiving them soon. Her words seemed to shatter Ethan. He could see in her eyes that she wasn't joking. Sierra truly wanted to leave him. Her expression was distant, as if she were looking at a stranger. Ethan's eyes were red. He couldn't find any words, but he didn't want to lose face in front of Felix. He tried to step forward and talk to Sierra properly, but Felix moved to block him. Sierra stood behind Felix, showing no intention of stopping him. Her silence was a clear endorsement. She wanted nothing more to do with him. Ethan understood this, and a dull ache pierced his heart. Years of being in charge had made him forget how to humble himself. He tried to get past to Sierra, but Felix grabbed his shoulder. Does the great Mr. Hawthorne enjoy being so persistent? Ethan didn't answer, just stared at Sierra with bloodshot eyes. She turned her head, refusing to meet his gaze. His anger overwhelmed everything else. Ethan lost control. He turned and walked away. Chapter 15. Ethan's hasty departure stirred up a gust of wind that brushed past Sierra. She was burning with fever. Unable to hold on any longer, her body went limp, and she started to fall. Felix quickly dropped the luggage to catch her. Sierra, are you okay? Hang on, I'll get you to your room. After a flurry of activity, Sierra was finally lying in bed. The moment her aching bones touched the mattress, she felt an incredible sense of relief, as if she were floating on a cloud. But her mind was startlingly clear. She hadn't expected Ethan to follow her, and so quickly. In her mind, without her, the Mrs. Hawthorne, standing in their way, Ethan and Selena would have made their relationship public. Ethan seemed to care about Selena. Why would he let her carry the title of the other woman? Sierra pushed the thought away. That would explain Ethan's pursuit. It was just a matter of habit. He was simply not used to her being gone, she thought. You get attached to anything that's been around for a long time. They had been together for over a decade. It was only natural for Ethan to feel a sense of loss after her sudden departure. But with enough time, he would soon forget her. After all, he had Selena by his side. Sierra closed her eyes, and a tear silently slipped onto the pillow. Ethan bought a ticket for the next flight back to Metropolis. Every second he spent in Seabrook filled him with rage. He had rushed here worried about Sierra, only to find her standing behind another man. It was humiliating. His mind was a mess. What had he even come here for? He had accomplished nothing. He, dusty and travel-worn, had stood before them like an outsider. It was ridiculous. He was supposed to be Sierra's husband, yet he was the one who had fled in disgrace. At the thought, Ethan angrily slammed his fist against his seat. Jealousy was driving him mad. He drank until the floor was littered with bottles, then called Selena to come over. Selena arrived as requested. Before she could even speak, Ethan kissed her fiercely. This wasn't passion. It was an exorcism. The only person who could make Ethan this miserable was Sierra. Selena's face hardened with a viciousness she could barely contain. Ethan lost himself in the soft comfort, deliberately ignoring every thought of Sierra, forcing himself not to think of her. Chapter 16. It was the only word Ethan murmured before he fell asleep. Selena looked at his face, her eyes dripping with a jealousy so thick it could have stained the floor. She traced the line of his sleeping eyes, a slow smile spreading across her lips. So what if he called out another woman's name? She was the one lying in this bed. She was the one sleeping with Sierra's man. Selena rose slowly, leisurely surveying the room with a triumphant gaze. She walked into the closet, a dazzling array of designer bags and clothes lining the walls. All things Ethan had bought for Sierra, and she hadn't taken a single one. Selena shamelessly tried on the clothes, admiring herself in the mirror. Her eyes gleamed with envy. Selena was born in a rural village during a time of strict family planning policies. Her family had wanted a son, so they claimed Selena was found abandoned and threw her into an orphanage. The first time Selena saw Sierra wasn't at Ethan's company. It was a sweltering summer day. The children of the orphanage stood in a neat line, baking under the hot sun, waiting for the arrival of the important people the director had spoken of. Sweat rolled down their foreheads, their backs like sponges soaking through their thin clothes. Finally, a brand new car kicked up a cloud of dust as it pulled up in front of them. When the door opened, the first thing Selena felt was a blast of ice-cold air conditioning. It was like a sensation from another world. The orphanage was poor. They rarely even turned on fans in the summer, and the long, hot nights were spent sweating through to morning. A girl got out of the car, dressed in clothes that were obviously expensive. Selena stared at her, her hands nervously twisting the patched hem of her own dress. That girl was Sierra. Her family had a long tradition of sponsoring the orphanage. Sierra hopped out of the car, stirring up a small cloud of dust that settled on her dress. She frowned slightly and brushed it away. To Selena, however, that small gesture looked like disgust. The seed of jealousy was planted. Selena vowed to destroy Sierra. She worked her way into a university in Metropolis, monitored Sierra's every move, and became Ethan's mistress. Selena lifted her chin high, her fingers gliding over rows of expensive dresses. The fabric felt just as she had imagined it would as a child. She casually picked one out and held it up to the mirror. The dress was a bit dated, not good enough for her now. Just like the two of them, youth was the ultimate currency. Selena sneered, her fingers tightening slightly before she tossed the dress to the floor. She strolled over to the vanity, playing with the bottles of skincare that cost more than she earned in years. A glance out of the corner of her eye caught a line of words carved into the table: Ethan and Sierra, together forever. Selena traced the words, her eyes full of mockery. She picked up a lipstick and smeared it over the inscription. She placed breakfast by Ethan's bedside, left a note without waiting for him to wake up, and departed. Chapter 17. When Ethan woke up, it was almost noon. He saw the breakfast Selena had left for him. He felt a pang of frustration, remembering that while he was with Selena, he had called out Sierra's name. He ate a few bites distractedly and went into the closet to change for work. The sight that greeted him was a shock. Sierra's clothes were strewn all over the floor. A flicker of anger appeared in Ethan's eyes. He didn't like Selena touching Sierra's things. Muttering a warning to himself about Selena, he walked back into the bedroom. He had drunk too much last night and couldn't remember where he'd put his car keys. He scanned the room and spotted them on the vanity. Ethan strode over, picked up the keys, and noticed that the line of words on the tabletop had been smeared with red. It was like a final verdict on the failure of his relationship with Sierra. There was no one else who could have done this but Selena. "Morning, Mr. Hawthorne." "Mr. Hawthorne?" Ethan stormed through the office, ignoring the greetings, and barked, "Get Selena in my office." "Hey, Selena, Mr. Hawthorne wants to see you," an assistant said with a wink. "The news about him and Sierra breaking up is all over the office. I bet you'll be the new lady of the company soon." "Don't be ridiculous," Selena replied with a playful pout, but her face was alight with confidence. She swayed her way into Ethan's office. Thud. The moment she closed the door, a folder hit the floor at her feet. She looked at Ethan, confused. "Mr. Hawthorne, what's this?" Ethan's face was grim. He looked at her coldly, his voice dripping with pressure. "Why did you touch Sierra's clothes? Why did you touch that vanity?" His reaction sent a jolt of fear through Selena. She had gotten too complacent after Sierra left. Just as she had done so many times before, she let large tears roll down her cheeks, sniffling, her voice breaking. I've just never seen so many nice clothes. I wanted to try them on. The vanity, I accidentally got makeup on it. I tried to clean it, but it wouldn't come off. I didn't do it on purpose." In some ways, she and Sierra were similar, but Sierra would never back down in front of Ethan. So every time Selena put on this pitiful act, Ethan would forgive her. But this time, her usual trick failed to soften his heart. Ethan wasn't a fool. He had indulged Selena before because she was obedient enough and a good way to pass the time. Combined with Sierra's cold attitude towards him, he had acted out of a desire for revenge, deliberately being good to Selena to make Sierra jealous. That's why he had always taken her side, no matter what she said. But things were different now. The office gossip and the little clues from their time together made Ethan realize that Selena was not as simple as she appeared. Her appearance and her proximity to him had all been with his tacit approval. She was nothing more than a toy for him to play with, but now she dared to have her own ambitions, to scheme for more from him. Ethan was an arrogant man. He had to be the one in control, and Selena's selfish scheming had crossed a line. He rose from behind his desk, walked over to Selena, and grabbed her hand, squeezing hard enough to leave a red mark on her wrist. "Are you still not going to tell the truth?" His face held a viciousness Selena had never seen. "You've been with me for a while. I'd rather not make this ugly." He flung her hand away and sat back down in his chair, tapping his fingers lightly on the desk. "You should be very clear that everything you have, I gave to you. Which means I can take it all away just as easily." The coldness on Ethan's face was absolute. His words were a death sentence for Selena. She seemed to have forgotten just what a dangerous man she was dealing with. Chapter 18. Selena's tears stopped. Her hands hung limply at her sides as she stared at Ethan in utter confusion. She couldn't understand how his attitude could change so drastically. Before, whenever she cried, he would be the first to comfort her, trying everything to make her happy. But now, his face was a mask of indifference. It was as if she could cry her eyes out and he would just watch coldly, maybe even applaud. But Selena wasn't ready to give up. She couldn't believe his feelings had changed so quickly. She kept her lips sealed, her voice a near desperate plea. "Mr. Hawthorne, please believe me, it was an accident. I know you don't like things like that. Why would I do it on purpose? If you're tired of me, I can leave the company, as long as it makes you happy." Selena was still trying to play the long game. Ethan loved it when she was submissive. He had to be swayed. If she could just get through this, she would be more careful. She would never anger him again. Sierra was gone. Everything should be hers now. She would live a better life than Sierra ever did, but this time, Ethan remained seated, high and mighty, without saying a word. He let out a cold, derisive laugh. An unthawable ice filled his eyes, and a mocking smile played on his lips. "You really won't give up until you're at death's door, will you? Selena, my patience is not as endless as you seem to think." With that, he threw another folder at her. The sharp corner of the folder struck her shin, leaving a cut and an immediate dark bruise. "Selena, I will take away everything you have. If you still won't tell the truth, I can guarantee your life will be a living hell." He was just sitting there, yet a single, softly spoken sentence could decide her fate. Panic seized Selena. She didn't know how to salvage the situation. A ringing phone broke the tense standoff. Ethan answered, his eyes fixed on Selena as he listened to the report from the other end. Selena could tell the call was about her. She closed her eyes and tucked a stray strand of hair behind her ear. That was it. With Ethan's resources, finding out her background would be child's play. Ethan's gaze grew colder and colder. Finally, he hung up. Selena had already composed herself. Before Ethan could speak, she sat down on the sofa. Ethan strode over to her, the veins in his neck pulsing. "Don't be like that, Ethan," Selena said, smoothing her sleeve and smiling at him. He had first met her outside a bar he frequented. She was wearing a pink dress, her eyes as innocent as a fawn's. She had accidentally spilled a drink on his shirt and looked up at him in a panic to apologize. That angle, that outfit, it was a mirror image of the Sierra he first knew. At the time, he and Sierra were in the middle of a cold war. He had gone to the bar to drown his sorrows. On a whim, he had taken Selena to bed. Only now did he realize that all the similarities were just a deliberate act. The expression on Selena's face now was one he had never seen before. This was the real Selena. Chapter 19. You didn't cherish Sierra when she was here, and now you're playing the devoted lover. How pathetic. I thought the man she fell for would be someone special, but you're just this. Selena's dismissive tone instantly enraged Ethan. He lunged forward and wrapped his hands around her neck. What did you say? GHK, GHK. Selena struggled to breathe, but a smile still played on her lips. Mr. Hawthorne, didn't your investigation find out? Everything I did was to get revenge on Sierra. Her words struck Ethan like a bolt of lightning. The realization that his affair had been engineered, that he had been a pawn, was utterly humiliating. His grip loosened, and Selena collapsed onto the sofa. She coughed twice, her eyes shining with a feverish light. You found out everything, didn't you? Sierra sponsored our orphanage. Ha 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 ha, why her? Her hair fell messily across her face, her expression wild. Why is the world so unfair? Why was she the rich young miss and I was the abandoned orphan? She laughed loudly. But it doesn't matter. I took everything from her. I slept in her bed, I slept with her husband, and in the end, she was the one who left, not me. I won, ha 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 ha. She had clawed her way out of that small village just to catch up to the Sierra from her childhood, just to surpass her. Now her goal was achieved. Her laughter was genuine. Stop pretending to be so devoted, Ethan, who's even here to see it. Her words pierced through his charade. Ethan was furious. He slammed her head against the coffee table. Ha 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 ha. Selena didn't cry out in pain. She just laughed even more hysterically. Her eyes glinted with a vicious hatred. She flailed her arms, her body swaying. You love Sierra so much, but did you know she's dying? Ha 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 ha, this is hilarious. The words were a thunderclap that stopped Ethan in his tracks. He grabbed her by the hair, pulling her up to face him. He gritted his teeth, forcing the words out one by one. What are you talking about? Selena wrapped her arms around him and whispered in his ear. In the bottom corner compartment of the vanity, you'll find her medical records. She was diagnosed with cancer. Ethan felt the world spinning out of his control. A chill shot from the top of his head to the soles of his feet. He froze, his earlier ferocity gone, as if he couldn't comprehend her words. What did you say? Selena pulled away, a cold smile on her face as she stepped back, savoring his panicked expression. She slowed her words down. Sierra is dying. Ethan's whole body trembled. He turned and bolted out of the office. His mind was a blank on the drive home, his foot mechanically pressing the accelerator. He didn't want to believe it, but all the details he had deliberately ignored now resurfaced, forming a horrifying truth. He burst into the room, his hands shaking as he rummaged through the vanity. In the very last drawer, he found a thin file. He flipped it open, his eyes scanning past the unimportant details until they landed on the final words. Confirmed, late-stage cancer. Seeing those words, Ethan's pupils contracted violently. He nearly passed out. He clutched the file to his chest, struggling to stand. He was in a terrible state, completely lost. His foot slipped and he crashed to the floor. With red-rimmed eyes, Ethan fought the urge to cry. He didn't get up. Instead, he began tearing the medical file to shreds, as if he were fighting someone. He stared at the tiny scraps of paper, his eyes filled with a raw, vulnerable grief. Chapter 20. He remembered the vitamins Sierra had been taking. He scrambled to his feet and ripped open the nightstand drawer. It was crammed full of pill bottles, each with a label indicating the daily dosage. Ethan recognized the handwriting. Sierra always carefully labeled every medicine in the house. Looking closely at the labels, he could see the writing wasn't smooth. Sierra must have been interrupted by sudden waves of pain, forced to put down the pen and endure the agony before she could continue. Ethan felt as if he had been struck by a blunt object. A sharp pain shot through his head, followed by a chilling clarity, the first he'd felt in a long time. He vividly recalled every hopeful look in Sierra's eyes, every time her voice held a hint of something she couldn't say. Sierra had been enduring this terrible illness all alone, waiting for him to come home night after night. She had never hidden her medication from him. Perhaps she had wanted him to notice, but what had he been doing? He was out sleeping with another woman, while Sierra was at home, alone, swallowing handfuls of pills. The memory of a sweet, smiling girl was replaced by the image of a thin, somber woman. No wonder Sierra had become so quiet. The pain was so intense she could barely speak. And yet, he hadn't been there for her. When she was at her most vulnerable, when she needed him most, all Ethan had given her was pain and a blatant betrayal. Ethan raised his hand and slapped himself hard across the face. He started searching for people, dropped everything, and flew to Seabrook. He wanted to find Sierra, take her to the best doctors, and atone for his infidelity. But he was too late. The hotel staff had no idea where they had gone. His angry words that day, that he would never see her again, had become a cruel reality. Ethan knew Sierra wouldn't return to Metropolis. He left the company in someone else's hands and moved to Seabrook himself. He hadn't had a peaceful night's sleep in days. His mind was constantly on Sierra, his heart aching for her. He still couldn't accept the truth. He would rather be the one with cancer. He was exhausted, physically and mentally. He fell asleep on the sofa, still in his clothes. He felt like he wasn't truly asleep. His mind was in a fog, drifting through a dream. The dream was vivid. Ethan felt as if he had returned to his college days. A girl with a ponytail bounced ahead of him, the air thick with the scent of osmanthus. She turned around and gave him a sweet smile. Ethan vaguely felt a cold liquid on his face. He woke up to find it was his own tears. He picked up the prayer beads from the side table. He had never believed in such things before. But now he understood. A person's life and death were truly beyond their control. Ethan knew what he was afraid of. He was terrified that Sierra would just die, but he couldn't control the world. Now, he believed in gods and Buddhas. He was willing to pray sincerely, to give up everything he had in exchange for Sierra's safety. Chapter 21. They had moved to a quiet, spring-like region. Sierra had always loved places like this. She had long wanted to live here for a while, but Ethan was always either busy with work or with someone else. Now, she had finally fulfilled her wish, settling into a house with its own tea garden. Sierra's illness had worsened. Her already delicate skin was now covered in dark purple bruises. Her limbs had begun to swell, and a gentle poke would leave a small pit. She was listless all day, rarely eating or speaking, just gazing out the window. Felix was terrified. He'd had a nightmare the night before. He dreamt of the rice paddies from their childhood. Sierra stood among them in a long dress, and a fierce wind swept across the land, making her skirt whip around her. Sand blew into Felix's eyes. When he opened them again, the wind had carried Sierra up into the sky. It felt like an omen. Felix looked at her profile and spoke softly. "Sierra, I've contacted that senior colleague I mentioned. Let me take you abroad for treatment, okay?" Sierra turned to him, her tone gentle but firm. "Lando, I told you I don't want treatment." Felix stared into her eyes. "I have the money to pay for it. I promised you when we were kids, I would get you better no matter what." Although they had met in the countryside, both their families were well known and wealthy. It was only after her parents' death that Sierra's family had fallen on hard times. Sierra knew Felix was serious, but she could feel her body giving out. She didn't want to waste his kindness. "Lando, you're a doctor. You know how much time I have left. Why do this?" Sierra tried to memorize the face of her childhood friend. "If you really care about me, then don't talk about this. You know how vain I am. I don't want to die in a hospital with tubes sticking out of me." Felix had been trying to deny this reality, even wanting to question his own professional judgment. Sierra's words pierced his heart and he fought back tears, turning away in a pained retreat. Sierra was quiet. She spent her days doing nothing, just standing by the window, looking at the tea plants. She had thrown away all her medicine, choosing to endure the pain on her own. Time flew by. Soon, it was almost summer. On days when she felt better, Sierra would go for walks, mostly just to look at the flowers. On bad days, she would curl up in bed and do nothing. What Felix feared most now was seeing her asleep. In her condition, it was possible she might never wake up. Ethan endured the longest winter of his life in Seabrook. Late at night, lying in bed, he would hear Sierra's pained sobs, but when he looked, he found it was just his imagination. He slept even less, and when he did, it was fitful. He was plagued by dreams, one after another. They were all of Sierra, at different stages of her life, with different expressions. But in every dream, she never looked at him. He would follow her, stubbornly trying to see her face. But her face was always shrouded in mist, impossible to see clearly. All he could see were pools of blood at his feet. Ethan would wake up from these dreams with a start, too afraid to close his eyes again. I was wrong. A sharp, stabbing pain seized Ethan's heart, stealing his breath. Ugh! Overcome with fear and grief, he coughed up a mouthful of blood. Seeing the blood brought a strange sense of relief. He hoped he had cancer too, so he could go and be with her. He kept trying to contact Felix, but all his attempts were futile, as if their connections had been deliberately erased. After offering a hefty reward, someone finally provided a clue. He booked the fastest flight, one in economy class, something he hadn't done in years. Chapter 22. Today was the first rainy day since they arrived in the valley. The falling rain easily triggered the pain deep within Sierra's body. She spent the whole day in a drowsy, half-conscious state, barely moving, her face paler than paper. Anyone who saw her now would speak in hushed tones. She looked so fragile, as if a loud noise might shatter her. Terrified, Felix stayed by her bedside. After most of the day had passed, Sierra finally managed to open her eyes. Lando, when I die, scatter my ashes in the sea. The smile that had just appeared on Felix's face at her waking vanished. Don't say things like that. She managed a weak smile to comfort him. It's okay, you're my best friend. You'll do this for me, won't you? Felix turned away, too angry to look at her. Sierra just kept her eyes on him. He swallowed the grief in his chest and turned back to face her. Sierra understood that he had agreed. She slowly lay back down and closed her eyes. Felix stayed for a while longer, then quietly left, closing the door behind him. Only then did Sierra open her eyes again, staring blankly at the patch of sky outside her window. What she had just asked of Felix was cruel, but she had no one else to turn to. She hoped she could meet him again in the next life. Then, she would repay his love. Ethan drove to the small courtyard himself. He had wanted to rush over as soon as he landed. But he was hesitant, afraid his disheveled appearance would scare Sierra, and even more afraid that she wouldn't want to see him. The address was hard to find, and it took him a long time to get there. He peered into the courtyard but saw no one. Ethan gently pushed open the gate and walked to the front door. Felix was in the kitchen making dinner when he heard a knock. It wasn't loud, just persistent enough to be irritating. Worried it would disturb Sierra, he hurried to see who it was. It was Ethan. Felix opened the door, slipped outside, and pulled it shut behind him. Before Ethan could react, Felix's fist slammed into his face. The blow snapped Ethan's head to the side, and he spat out a trickle of blood. In consideration of Felix's care for Sierra, he didn't retaliate. I'll take that punch. I'm here to take Sierra away. Felix laughed in disbelief. You have the nerve to say that? Ethan frowned, clearly annoyed. She is still my wife. You, on the other hand, are just a doctor. You have no right to interfere in our affairs. Felix looked at him, his voice dripping with scorn. Mr. Hawthorne, where were you when Sierra needed you? She came to the hospital last winter, all alone. The tests were painful, but she endured them by herself. Where were you then? A sharp pain shot through Ethan's heart. He tried to remember what he had been doing. He had been in bed with Selena. How ridiculous. He had abandoned Sierra to fool around with a substitute. Seeing him silent, Felix continued coldly, You were in bed with your little secretary. Ethan's lips trembled uncontrollably. He wanted to defend himself, but he had nothing to say. Felix punched him again. This time, he didn't even try to dodge. Felix was breathing heavily. "You know what you did was inhuman, don't you? How dare you come looking for her now?" Ethan was knocked to the ground. His weakened body wouldn't let him stand. He grabbed Felix's leg as he turned to leave, his voice pleading, "Please, I'm begging you, let me see her just once." Felix shook him off without looking back, went inside and locked the door. Chapter 23. Worried the commotion had disturbed Sierra, Felix went upstairs to check on her. He opened the door to find she wasn't in bed. She was wearing a wrap, standing by the window, looking down at Ethan, who was still on the ground. "Sierra," Felix called out, his voice hoarse. She turned, her eyes filled with a storm of unreadable emotions. "Do you want to go down and see him?" Felix asked reluctantly. He didn't want her to see Ethan, but Ethan was right. Their decade-long relationship was not something an outsider like him could interfere with. To his surprise, Sierra's answer was swift and firm. "No." Sierra remembered her last day in Metropolis with perfect clarity. She remembered the sunny day charm she had smashed with her own hands, and she remembered his words. "Do you have anywhere to go?" The sight of Ethan lying on the ground below swirled in her mind, not with pity, but with a sense of bitter irony. She had given him chances, but he had thrown them all away. He seemed to have forgotten that Sierra was a person who loved and hated with equal intensity. She didn't need him anymore. Ethan lay on the ground for a long time. He had no strength to get up, nor did he want to. He stared blankly at the sky, his heart filled with a bottomless regret for his foolish actions. For as long as Ethan lay on the ground, Sierra stood behind the curtain, watching. A light rain began to fall, soaking the earth and soaking Ethan. The mud and water mixed together, sticking him to the ground. He must have gone mad to think that this wasn't so bad. At least he was on the same patch of earth as Sierra. His clothes clung to his skin. A violent cough racked his body, and a flower of blood bloomed on his shirt. Ethan's mind grew hazy. He thought it would be nice to die like this. But then, an image of Sierra in a white dress cut through the fog like a ray of light. Ethan struggled to his feet. He could die, but not now. He had to find people, the best specialists, to treat Sierra. Driven by this conviction, he looked back at the house one last time and stumbled away, his figure disappearing from Sierra's view. Felix stood behind the door, having witnessed his departure as well. His phone buzzed with a new message. He glanced at it. It was from Ethan. "Sierra doesn't want to see me. I'm going back to Metropolis first. Make sure she rests well. I'm going to find the best doctors for her." Felix felt nothing. He swiped and deleted the message. He found it laughable. He had the connections and the money. He didn't need Ethan's help. But Sierra's body, Felix buried his face in his hands, rubbing it fiercely. Sierra sat on the bed, her hand pressed to her mouth, trying to stifle a heart-wrenching cough. When she pulled her hand away, it was covered in bright red blood and small pieces of tissue. She stared at her hand silently for a long moment before getting up to clean it. When Sierra came downstairs, Felix had dinner ready. She held her bowl and looked at him. "Lando, let's go back to our hometown tomorrow." Her body wasn't fit for long-distance travel, but her eyes were filled with such longing that Felix couldn't bring himself to refuse. Chapter 24. Sierra returned to Seabrook, a place she hadn't been to in a long time. She took Felix to her aunt's house. When her Aunt Carol opened the door and saw Sierra standing there, tears welled up in her eyes. "Sierra, you've gotten so thin." Sierra said nothing, just stepped forward and hugged her aunt tightly. Carol wept in her arms. Sierra buried her head in her aunt's shoulder, savoring the familiar comfort. She whispered, "Don't cry, Aunt Carol. I came all this way and I haven't eaten yet. Please make me some food." Carol wiped her tears and bustled into the kitchen. Sierra led Felix to the sofa and went into a room to get a photo album. It was filled with pictures of her family of 3. Sierra's parents had passed away when she was in college. She traced the faces of her parents in the photos, her expression full of nostalgia. At the dinner table, Sierra announced her intention to visit her parents' graves. She had studied and lived in Metropolis for many years and hadn't been back to visit them often. Her aunt was worried about whether she was well enough to go alone. Felix assured her that he would go with Sierra and make sure she was safe. Only then did her aunt agree. As they reached the cemetery, a light rain began to fall, blurring the world outside the car window. Felix handed Sierra an umbrella, but she didn't take it. She covered her face with her hands, her whole body trembling. In the years since her parents had been gone, she had taken such poor care of herself. She didn't dare to face them. Felix knew what she was thinking. He gently put an arm around her shoulders, offering silent encouragement. "You should put on another jacket. Your parents would be worried." Sierra rubbed her face and finally got out of the car. She walked alone through the cemetery, umbrella in hand, until she stopped in front of a marble headstone. She knelt, her hand tracing the photos of her parents, her eyes red, but no tears would fall. "Mom, Dad, it's all my fault. I turned myself into such a mess and got this disease." A thick wave of sorrow choked her words. She paused before continuing, "But I'll be seeing you soon. I miss you so much. Just wait for me a little longer." A gust of wind blew the rain sideways, drenching Sierra. She fell to her knees, unable to speak for a long time. Back in the car, Felix kept checking his watch. A long time passed, but Sierra didn't appear at the cemetery exit. Worried something had happened, Felix anxiously got out and went to find her. He searched row by row until he finally found her at the very back. The sight made his blood run cold. He rushed over. Her umbrella had been blown away, and she was lying unconscious in a pool of muddy water. Felix quickly checked. She was still breathing, but faintly. The situation was dire. Ignoring the rain and the traffic laws, Felix drove with his hazard lights flashing, speeding through the storm to the hospital. He sat in the hospital all night, his eyes glued to the glowing red "in surgery" sign, not daring to look away. He was a doctor, yet he found himself praying to any and all gods, hoping they would hear him and pull that poor girl back from the brink. As dawn broke, Sierra was finally wheeled out. Felix rushed to her side. She was covered in tubes, her face so pale it was almost transparent, like exquisite glass on the verge of shattering. Sierra was moved to the ICU. Felix's visiting hours were limited. Most of the time, he could only stand behind the thick glass and watch her. She was hooked up to all sorts of machines. She looked like she was in pain, yet she also looked so light, as if she might float away at any moment. Even from a distance, Felix knew her condition was worsening. Before, Sierra could at least manage to sleep. Now, she couldn't rest for a whole night. She could only endure, night after night, her body visibly deteriorating. She was like a flower petal in the wind, ready to fall to the earth at any moment. Time passed with frightening speed. It was the first day of summer. Felix, dressed in full protective gear, had just sat down beside Sierra when she opened her eyes. Chapter 25. "Looks like my luck is good today," Felix quipped. Sierra's moments of lucidity were rare. Usually, she was asleep, and he was left to talk to himself. Today, he had timed it perfectly. Even from outside the ICU, Felix knew her illness was progressing rapidly. Before, she could at least manage to sleep. Now, she was unable to rest for a whole night. She could only endure, night after night, her body visibly deteriorating. She was like a flower petal in the wind, ready to fall to the earth at any moment. Time was passing with terrifying speed. After just a short time in the ICU, she had reached the end of her life. She was speaking, but her voice was a mere whisper. "Lando, this has been so hard on you." Just looking at her now was enough to make one's eyes well up. Felix leaned closer, his ear turned towards her, conveniently hiding the moisture in his eyes. "When I die, I want to be buried at sea. Don't wait. Don't wait for anyone." She spoke slowly, but her eyelashes fluttered ceaselessly, like the last flickering flame of a candle about to be extinguished. Felix knew what was happening. He had been a doctor for many years and had seen many patients at the end of their lives. From the moment he stepped into the room, he had sensed that today was different. "Thank you, Lando," Sierra said slowly, wanting to make every word clear. "I'm so glad I met you. If people can have a next life, I hope I meet you first." Her voice was soft, drifting and dissipating in the air. He listened intently, catching every word. The gentle rise and fall of her chest stilled after she finished speaking. Felix's mind went blank, unable to process what was happening. Beep, the sound from the monitor was sudden and sharp, announcing the end of a life and jolting Felix from his stupor. A swarm of doctors pushed him out of the room. Felix knew that everything they were about to do was futile. Sierra was gone. In a hospital she hated, covered in tubes, Felix's legs trembled. He couldn't move. He slid down the hospital wall and sat on the floor. The world became a vacuum, echoing only with the shrill cry of the machine. His phone buzzed incessantly. The vibration brought him back to reality. He raised a hand and wiped away his tears. "Hello?" His voice was hoarse. "It's me, Ethan Hawthorne." The man on the other end was pleading. "Don't hang up." Before Felix could speak, the man continued, "I'm begging you, please bring Sierra back." Ethan no longer cared about losing face in front of his rival. Just moments ago, he had felt a piece of his heart go missing, and a terrible premonition had made him dial this number. "I love her so much. Everything that happened before, I was a fool. I can't live without her. Please, will you bring her back?" Ethan's voice was filled with humility and desperation. He didn't want his pride. He just wanted Sierra back in front of him. Felix listened to him, thinking of Sierra's bitter smile as she said she had no money for treatment. A venomous hatred grew in his heart. Softly and with a touch of vengeance, he said, "She's gone." Ethan was holding a cigarette. He didn't react to the words at first. Only when the cigarette burned his fingers did he jolt back to reality. For a moment, he felt as if he couldn't hear anything. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. The sun was shining brightly outside, but he felt colder than if he had been plunged into an icy abyss. You're lying, it's not possible," Ethan roared, his voice more terrifying than a wild animal's. "Did Sierra tell you to say that?" "I won't go near her again. Just tell me it's not true. I'll never go near her again." Ethan fell to his knees, his head throbbing as if it would explode. "Believe it or not." Felix threw out the words and hung up, not caring about Ethan's reaction. Ethan lay on the floor in a daze, refusing to accept the news. He began to cough violently, so hard that blood splattered from his nose. The sight of the glaring crimson jolted him. Ethan struggled to his feet. He had to see for himself. He didn't believe Felix. Ethan called his secretary and booked the fastest flight to Seabrook. Chapter 26. He grabbed his keys and was about to leave when he ran into a courier. "Mr. Ethan Hawthorne?" Ethan was in a hurry and tried to walk past him, but the courier's next words froze him in place. "This is a package from Miss Sierra Westwood. It's an express delivery. Would you like to see it?" Hearing the name Sierra, he turned stiffly, his eyes locked on the box. With trembling hands, Ethan hastily signed for it and took it to his car. It was a small, square box. Ethan found he didn't dare to open it. He couldn't imagine what was inside. At this moment, anything related to Sierra could only be one of two things, a miracle or a final blow. After a moment of silence, he tore it open. Inside was a set of divorce papers. Ethan didn't want to see them. He reached out and threw them out of the car. Thump, the sound was wrong. There was something else in the box. Ethan scrambled out of the car and picked it up with shaking hands. He hoped it was a video. He hoped the video would show Sierra somewhere abroad, taunting him, telling him she had started a new life. He would rather accept that outcome than her being dead. Ethan! The background was their home. Sierra was sitting on the bed in her nightgown. "By the time you see this video, I should already be dead." He hadn't seen Sierra's face in so long. Tears immediately filled his eyes. "I don't have much to say. You probably thought you did a good job of hiding your affair with Selena, but I knew about it a long time ago. Do you remember? I told you I hate infidelity. But you did it anyway. I wanted to leave you, but..." The girl choked up for a moment before continuing. "But I found I couldn't. You were the only person I ever loved in my life, and you still treated me like that. Now that I'm dead, I wonder if this counts as punishment for your betrayal." The girl forced a smile at the camera. "Even if it doesn't, it's okay. Let's just not meet in our next lives." She got off the bed and reached out to turn off the camera. The screen went black. Immersed in his grief, Ethan didn't turn off his phone right away and heard the final farewell hidden at the end. "Goodbye, Ethan." Those two words struck a chord deep within him, and he broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. Ethan's body shook, his eyes bloodshot. An overwhelming grief consumed him. For every night he had spent with Selena, Sierra had been enduring pain, waiting for him to come home. He remembered the many calls he had received. At the time, they seemed like nothing, but now he could feel the tremor in Sierra's voice. And how had he responded to her hope? He had said, "I'm not coming home tonight." He had said, "Can you not be so clingy? Everyone has their own things to do, don't you have a life of your own?" Those words were like boomerangs, flying back to strike him one by one. Ethan seemed to have forgotten that Sierra had been instrumental in founding the company. She was not a woman confined to the home. It was he and his so-called love that had made her willingly step into that role, her life reduced to waiting for him to come home. He could no longer hold himself together. He buried his head in his knees. The heart that had beaten for so many years was torn to shreds, thrown on the ground, and stomped on hundreds of times. Was Sierra's pain like this? No, her pain must have been deeper. She was also carrying the weight of her illness. She hadn't tried to hide it from him. He had seen her taking her medicine, but he had never cared. In college, Sierra had taken medicine for colds, but only after he had coaxed her. She hated medicine, she was afraid of it. But by the end, she could swallow handfuls of pills without flinching, a whole drawer full of them. Ethan's hands clenched painfully in his hair. What kind of suffering had she gone through to become like that? And where was he, the one who should have been by her side? Ethan slammed his head against the steering wheel, but even that couldn't drown out the pain in his heart. Chapter 27. Felix took Sierra to the seaside. The waves, carried by the wind, roared towards the horizon. It was a beautiful day, just like the day he had first met Sierra all those years ago. The girl's smile had stayed with him from youth until now, finally reduced to a small, heavy box in his hands. He fought back the sting in his eyes. Today was their final goodbye. The girl wouldn't want to see him cry. Felix waded into the water, his steps slow but steady. He stopped when the water reached his knees. He opened the urn and carefully scattered the ashes into the sea. This part of the coast was secluded. No one would disturb Sierra here. The white powder swirled around him once, like a final embrace from the girl, before being carried out to the deep sea by the waves. Felix stood silently in the water for a long time. Only after the last speck of dust had vanished into the surging waves did he look away. As he turned, he wiped his eyes with his sleeve. He hadn't been able to hold back the tears after all. The day he received the video, Ethan nearly worked himself to death. His assistant waited for him at the airport for a long time. Even after the plane had taken off, there was no sign of him. The assistant knew something was wrong. He rushed to Ethan's house and found him unconscious in the car, a large gash on his head bleeding profusely. When he woke up in the hospital, his mind was still foggy. The light reflecting off the ceiling stung his eyes, but he forced them open. His phone chimed. It was a message from Felix with a copy of the death certificate. The assistant watched him nervously, afraid the shock would make him pass out again. But surprisingly, he just looked at the certificate intently, showing no extreme reaction. Ethan wearily turned his head and buried his face in the blankets. No one knew what he was thinking. After being discharged, Ethan was a changed man. He shed his decadent demeanor and returned to the company. He ate on time, handled business affairs diligently, and his management style softened. But he became more silent, rarely smiling. His gaze was often distant, filled with a deep loneliness, as if searching for something that wasn't there. By the time autumn arrived, Ethan had lost a lot of weight. Before all this, he had been a vibrant, successful man. Age had only added to his charm, but now he seemed ancient. Not in his appearance, but in his aura. It was lifeless, completely out of place for someone his age. Ethan began to dream frequently. The dreams were filled with different versions of Sierra, all with blood on their faces, accusing him of his sins. Even so, he was reluctant to wake up. He was terrified of forgetting her. Even in this form, he was glad to see her face. To dream of her more often, Ethan started drinking heavily, downing bottle after bottle of red and white wine. But soon, he discovered something even more terrifying. In his dreams, he could no longer hear Sierra's voice. Forgetting someone starts with forgetting their voice. It felt like an omen. Ethan couldn't accept the idea of one day forgetting Sierra completely. Like a tree being drained of its life force, he began to seek other ways to remember her. Ethan started self-harming, filling the bathtub with cold water mixed with his own blood. Only when he could no longer dream of her at all did Ethan truly accept that Sierra was dead. After half a month of self-imposed confinement, Ethan left his house for the first time and went to a pottery studio. Following his memory, he sculpted a new sunny day charm, just like the one Sierra had shattered. Ethan took off his wedding ring and tucked it inside the charm's head. Sierra had picked out this ring. Now, it left a faint mark on his finger. He wondered if Sierra would like the one he made. Summer was ending. The early autumn weather wasn't cold, but Ethan was already wearing a thick suit. He had spent the year punishing his body, and now, It seemed his wish was coming true. Ethan sold off his shares in the company and prepared to leave Metropolis. The day he arrived in Seabrook, the sky was filled with dark, heavy clouds, and the wind was strong enough to knock a person over. Warning signs were posted at the beach where he and Sierra used to go in college. Sierra used to sit in the swing under that tree, sunbathing. They would play volleyball on the sand and huddle together to watch the sunrise, sunset, and stars over the sea. Ethan climbed over the warning signs and walked towards the shore. The sea reflected the dark clouds, a black expanse. The wind pushed the waves, making them crash violently against the sand. Ethan sat on the beach for a while, dazed. He had brought nothing with him but the sunny day charm. He began to dig in the sand with his bare hands until he had made a deep hole. Ethan took one last look at the sea and jumped into the hole. He sat at the bottom, clutching the charm, looking up at the small patch of sky. Was the weather like this on the day Sierra left? He thought, lost. I'm coming to find you, Sierra. Ethan was going to find Sierra, but he couldn't have an easy death. That would be too unfair to her. The waves grew higher and higher, gradually approaching the hole. Seawater mixed with sand poured down on him from above. Ethan closed his eyes, letting the mud and sand cover him completely. Half an hour later, there was nothing left on the beach. The hole had been completely swallowed by the sea.